get in there now, lads. Now get set fire to. These would be hardy hooers now from the islands to be well used to fishing and all those other stereotypical things. Farming
and RT aren't bloody showing it either.
And if it doesn't get a mention on the Sunday game, well, I'm done. You'd think Sky would pick one of them.
The GAA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. For exclusive content from their GAA ambassadors and other high-profile contributors, check out news.paddypower.com.
It's all about football this weekend, lads. We've got centre stage. Let's
about
make
time.
it a good one. It's about time. We've been marginalised for too long. How many weeks? 2 weeks.
What's this?
Feels like a lifetime.
Is this a rest week in the hurling, is it?
So it's a rest week. There's only one game in the hurling in the Lee McCarthy All-Ireland Championship, and there's one Joe McDonagh Cup game. So they're taking a break off, and football, there's a lot of games on. So there's 2 games in Moore Park. Carlow and Meath and Dublin allowed. I think I'll go to the Carlow Meath one. I'm trying to plan my weekend, lads, because it's not an easy one. And then we've got Mayo Roscommon clashing with Dublin Louth. I think I'll go home watch Mayo Roscommon because that's probably going to be a closer game. Obviously Dublin are 1-100. Right. And then on Sunday we have Donegal Fermanagh on telly on BBC, and Laois Westmeath are clashing with that. I think I'll go to Tullamore for that. And then Longford Kildare is the double header in Tullamore, and that's clashing with the Galway Wexford hurling match. So I'll come home and watch the hurling match. So there you go. Not bad.
Weekend sorted.
2
live games on TV. Oof, that's weird for the
2
provincial
live football games. Yeah, but we know, Fermanagh Donegal isn't the best one to have as our showcase piece. But that's just going to be it. That'll be the Sunday. That's the Sunday game. At 2 o'clock. So listen, we've a great weekend of football. Most of them will be good games, you'd imagine. Ryan McHugh has been talking ahead of the Donegal game against Fermanagh, and it's interesting because he had a few concussions. He had one really bad one in the league, wasn't it? Yeah. And he had to take 10 weeks out of the game. Yeah. And then he had an interesting interview I was reading. I can't see where I read it, but he was at a launch for AIB. So it was in a few different places. He was saying, I was actually doing an interview on that recently, and I was talking to my dad about maybe changing the way I play my game. Again, as I keep saying, it's easy to say that sitting around a table when you're talking about stuff or chatting. It's easy to say, I mightn't carry the ball as much, or I might try to kick it more, or I might try to change a wee bit. But then when you're in the heat of championship battle, when you're going to Brewster Park, in the heat of championship battle, if there's a ball between two, then it's extremely hard to pull out of the ball. And that's it. McHugh, he told a story he couldn't answer questions or anything in his last concussion. The physio was asking him questions. He knew the answer, but he wasn't able to give him the answer. So that's all scary stuff. But you can't get worried, and you can't change your game. I don't see how being a ball carrier really makes you more susceptible to concussions. It's getting in on breaking ball and contact. That's where you're getting the concussions. Being a ball carrier, I'm not sure. Can you get concussions from being a ball carrier? No. You might get tripped up, and you might get a few kind of heavy tackles in around the stomach area and stuff. But I would have thought concussions come from going for a ball, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you can't ever think I better not go for this ball because I get a concussion, or you'll never be seen on an inter-county field again.
Yeah, I was trying to think about why somebody like Ryan McHugh might get concussions. I don't think, as you said, I don't think that he's particularly susceptible, but he's 5'7", I think he's fairly low centre of gravity, very jinky, got a great side step. So the only thing I can think of is maybe that he I know personally, I have a habit nearly when you're carrying the ball, you kind of nearly lean with your head, kind of just you're protecting the ball, and you kind of lean your head downwards. And because he's so jinky and has a great side step, he could kind of be colliding with people that are coming in to tackle him. Because he had 3 in a row, and then he went back, he played a club game, and then he got another one. But I heard the interview that he actually gave. He was talking to second captains about maybe changing the way that kind of maybe kicking the ball more as opposed to running it. But I don't know. I think that would be an admission by Ryan McHugh that he as an individual is susceptible, whereas I'd like to think that he just got unlucky on these different occasions, you know what I mean? Because he just it happened so many times in a row, but that's it. You can all well say that you're going to change your game, but then doing it, as he says, in the heat of the championship battle is another different kettle of fish.
Well, that's the thing. It's maybe maybe getting clotheslined, maybe because he is that small, but he's very elusive, and he's got a really jinky sidestep, and in general fellas who are light on their feet like that won't really get caught too much. But kicking it isn't going to help, because if he kicks it, you have to go for the return, and you take that ball on the pop pass, then you can't avoid going into a tackle at pace on a GAA field, right? You can't. You just can't do it. So carrying the ball, he generally will carry the ball into space. I don't see him trying to slalom through too many lads. There's no avoiding contact. And if he starts thinking like that, then he'll psychologically get all messed up.
Yeah, and also you're either right or you're not, right? Like, and you shouldn't be taking a risk if you're not right. It's not about changing your game or anything. You're either right to play or you're not right. And what he does best is he ghosts. He wins ball when he's not on the ball. Yeah. So that is always going to be a danger. Like, he ghosts in the space when nobody expects him to, and then that's when I suppose you are susceptible to someone turning around and reacting to something. Yeah,
no, exactly. So I don't know. I'd like to have heard the conversation between himself and his father and what they decided on, but I don't think we'll see too much different from Ryan McHugh. Longford, Pádraig Davis has been given out because they've been riddled here with players going to America. So Darren Gallagher, their main man in midfield, he has been prevented from playing against Kildare, obviously, on Sunday. We know the rules, so if you want to go to America, you can't play championship. Now, he's not going to America until late June. So Pádraig Davis reckons that he could have him for 3 games before he goes. You know what I mean? Which is fair enough as well. And this is supposed to be a deterrent to going to America. But it doesn't seem to be working, because Longford have had 4 lads going. We see Lee Brennan has left the Tyrone panel. We don't know whether he's definitely going to America yet, but we'll have to wait and see. But Rian Brady we remember him from Mullinahachta. Desi Reynolds, he's going as well. And Peter Lynn, who played wing back last year, he's going too. So it is Darren Gallagher Desi Reynolds is actually an interesting one in that he's going to New York. So he was precluded from playing league, which is incredible. The New York County Board, if you're going out, you're not allowed to even play in the league. So if you want to go to New York for the summer, you have to completely take 1 full year out of intercounty football.
You have to decide before the league that you're going to New York.
Yeah, you can't. Well, you can't. If you decide, if you've played league, you can't go to New York that year. Right. So like they in the San Francisco, Boston, and Chicago boards, you can play the National League, but if you play Championship, then you can't go out there. So that's what they're doing. They're all having to drop off the panel. Jesus, I'm a little bit. I don't like this, to be honest, because. Like, I mean, what's against Darren Gallagher playing against Kildare, playing another couple of games? He's told Pádraig Davis last October, now I'm spending next summer in the Championship. I want to be involved until I go. Pádraig Davis says no problem, because generally managers won't stand in the way of any player, because this is part of growing up. It's an experience for the summer that a lot of J1 students do that never played GAA. And the great little added bonus for GAA players is that they'll get their flight paid out, and they might get a few quid at the end of it, and they come back then and make it easy on their parents when they're in college the following year. Isn't that fantastic? Why try to take that off them or make it hard? So why not just let them do both? Because the way Pádraig Davis, some managers gave out that players are just abandoning the squad after a first round loss, and that's fair enough. I think if you just landed on your manager, that it makes it difficult on a squad. But like the likes of Darren Gallagher's case, where he's been upfront and honest since last October, Pádraig Davis has accepted it. It seems very, very cruel on him that he can't play, according to Pádraig Davis, three games before he heads off. Yeah,
and late June as well. So like the Super 8s are middle of July. So like most counties Championship who aren't in the Super 8,
be out.
He could be there for the entire Championship, and go after that. But I find it strange that the New York board have one rule and the San Francisco board and Chicago board have another rule. But
they're separate. New York are completely separate. They're not one's North American and New York are their own. One county board covers the other 3, and New York have their own county board. I'm pretty sure.
Would it not be incumbent on the GAA to apply something that applies across the board in America to make it, to avoid cases like this?
Yeah.
It just seems, as you said, unfair.
Yeah, it's unless they take it as a case by case basis, I don't see why they would punish players for wanting to go there. And I don't see why you can't do both, because a lot of these weaker counties will be out by the end of June. And is it July the 1st was always the cut-off date for America anytime I played. So I mean, maybe this was decided again before the Championship was restructured, and now there's a good chance they'll all be out, where this came in and pretty much was it 2 or 3 years ago? I remember it happening with a few Offaly players all left, and there was a bit of a
last year. I remember Mayo got knocked out, I think, on the 30th of June last year, and Diarmuid O'Connor and Conor Loftus were flown to Chicago on the Sunday. Like immediately they were called immediately after the game, and that was
the round before the Super 8.
Yeah.
So Longford, a lot of these counties will be out.
I don't understand why the GAA wouldn't try to intervene here anyway, because it's affecting the,
well, it's
the
their
Irish
rule.
Championship. Yeah, well, that's it. But it's also then encouraging boys to either leave early, so counties are losing.
I think the hope of the rule was that it would dissuade people from going at all, which was never going to happen because, like, I mean, going to America for the summer is part of growing up in third level education.
Why did you want to dissuade them? Like, could they not just cater for both? Could they not try and come up with some sort of fixture list or championship that lets them play in their championship and then lets them go travelling to New York?
Yeah, I think they're trying to protect clubs as well. But we've a fella from Portlaoise, Benny Carroll. He dropped off the Laois panel. Another example, and he's going to Boston. And the way a lot of the championships are now, you'll play 2 in April. He's played those. Laois won't get going again until August. And he might miss 1 club game.
It's exactly
there's no Mayo, I mean, there's no club games during the summer. So, like, I mean, if you want to keep players in Ireland, well, then give them some matches at club level during the summer. Maybe that's the kind of solution to this whole thing. Instead of trying to ban them,
it's another can of worms altogether.
Yeah, we won't get into that here now. Yeah, because Lee Brennan, Mulligan was tweeting about Lee Brennan. He said Lee Brennan pulling out of the Tyrone senior setup is baffling. It's not baffling to me, anyways. This is happening all too often with our forwards every year. These young, exciting players are maybe fed up with the commitment it takes to get a starting jersey and not satisfied to be used as subs in big games. That's exactly it, as far as I'm concerned. That if you are a sub on a team, you believe you should be on it. You can't see any way you are going to be on it. Well, why not just go play with your club? Like, it's very, very easy for me. Like, I mean, why not just happily play a few league games with your club, enjoy spending time with your club mates, get a pint on a Saturday night, go to a festival during the summer, instead of being stuck in a regime which is it requires a huge commitment without the reward that you're used to getting by playing.
I know your way, we would have no subs on any teams. You would just have 15 players, like,
Yeah, well, you see, this is the thing. It depends. Some subs, it all depends on the mentality of the subs. Everybody's head doesn't work the same way. Some people see themselves as a sub and see themselves, I'm part of it. I'm happy to come on for 15 minutes. Other fellas think, well, I'm not enjoying that unless I'm starting. I don't think we'd be gone. I don't think all subs would go, because all subs don't have that mentality. All subs like me would be gone, which obviously there's not all that many. If every sub had my attitude, then you're right. There'd be no sub. But I do completely see where Lee Brennan would be coming from if that's his thought process.
I think it is tough for him, especially like they seem to have gone back to 1 up top, and they're like, so it's harder to get in that case. And Darren McCurry's suddenly shot back up the ranks.
He's gone ahead of him, yeah.
But there's a man who had sort of stepped away as well.
He went the year before.
He worked his way back into it, and like, it is frustrating when you see Ronan O'Neill and Mark Bradley and now Lee Brennan, Darren McCurry before, feeling like they can't. But Cal McShane's better than them. Like, and I think Mickey Hart would be looking at that Monaghan game last year in the semi-final, and Lee Brennan, like, we've been championing Lee Brennan for the last year and a half, Willie, me and you, but we sort of just looked a bit short off that level, like, and I think
did. I'd like to see him in this new system.
Yeah,
he was definitely short of that level under the old system, because he was not a runner and he couldn't make the Mark Bradley runs over and back. And he couldn't get into the game, he was being starved. I'd love to see him close to McShane or in and around there.
Surely there's room for somebody like him feeding off Colm McShane.
We see Derek Hannivan's probably gone ahead of, or Derek Hannivan's gone back with the under-20s. Yeah. In the future, Derek Hannivan will be there. But it's very difficult for him to have to go off the panel this year when there's finally more direct ball and guaranteed direct ball coming in. So it is unfortunate, but we championed him. I agree with you. He didn't take his chances, but remember, like, in some of the games, sure, he's been starved of possession. And then there's the old, the usual one, the corner forward is the first to come off, even though he's not getting good ball. He was brilliant, obviously, against Donegal when he came on as a sub. He showed what he could do, right?
Because at the real high level, I thought he was a bit short, but like that was his
first
real
pace.
Exposure to that level. I think give him a bit of a chance, but it's nearly like there's a pecking order in Tyrone that those lads are aware of it. Like the last few years, Ronan O'Neill and Lee Brennan are gone this year. Darren McCurry went last year. So it's nearly like they're aware, well, I know that McCurry is above me and he's going to be getting chances and I'm not, so I'll just go.
Yeah. And that happens when you have so little people in the full forward line. And then Brennan, in fairness to him, normally I would tell the sub to suck it up and get back in, especially when you're that good, but he's probably thinking McShane's there, Matty Donnelly's probably ahead of him as a full forward, and he can't do anything about his size or anything like that. Tyrone need big ball winners the way they play, so it's harder for him to actually just do something different to impress Mickey Hurd.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. So look, go back, enjoy, play with your club, and if he's happier in his life doing that, he doesn't owe anything to anyone. It's his own choice. So there's a headline in the 42.ie, and it says people were saying they don't want non-Irish people playing their sport. So I was like, Jesus, and there was a picture of Boidu Saye. And I was like, Jesus, this is horrific headline. I didn't think GAA people would kind of be like that or whatever, and I started reading it, and then I realised it's nothing to do with that at all. It's there were people on YouTube saying that. So like Boidu said, I think Irish people are very good at welcoming. If you're new to something, they love including people in things. I don't think it's the welcoming part. I think it's more than not knowing what... Alright, never mind that. In my experience with the GAA, it was more people guiding me towards it. So, like, I mean, he's clearly saying GAA people are welcoming, Irish people are welcoming in general. So then I'm wondering, what the hell is the headline got to do with anything? Why am I reading that headline, looking at a picture of him, thinking GAA people are racist? And then you get down a little bit further, and he says... he did something on YouTube, and he was saying, and on Facebook he did some show or something like that, and he says even the comments on Facebook, because you can see who's writing it, there are a lot of nice comments and people are friendly, but on the YouTube where you can't see who it is, there are horrible comments and people were saying that they don't want non-Irish people playing their sport. So there it is. A few dickheads on YouTube with no hiding behind anonymity are saying one or two horrible things. We know YouTube comment sections are avoidable at all. There is the dregs of society in the YouTube comment sections. But this was what was put in the headline beside a picture of him. I just thought that was terrible. I thought that is painting a really bad picture of what the GAA potentially could be like. Am I reading too much into this, or why should I be getting upset about this headline?
There is, I think most clubs are just sort of delighted to get players out. You know, that's the first thing. So they are genuinely welcoming to anybody who's in their community, and especially when you're that good as Saye is, like, you know, he's fast, he's strong, he's really good on the ball, like, you know, so anybody would be just dying to get him into their club and be so welcoming of him. But I have played in games before, like, where, you know, people have been racially abused and stuff like that. So when it's the opposition or when something flares, then there is that sort of undercurrent a bit, like, you know, so I wouldn't be as upset as you then at that headline.
Have you heard racist abuse on a GAA field? You have?
Oh, yeah.
And what's the reaction like?
Well, it started a big fight, like, you know, and the referee didn't take any action, like, but there was punches being thrown, and I think the ref heard it. So
in reaction to the comment?
Yeah.
Right.
And, like, all the team were in and stuff like that, and there was a fight afterwards outside the changing rooms. And
so how many times did this have you heard this on
I've heard it twice now. This is a mate of mine who's from Derry, but his dad's from Hong Kong, like, you know. Yeah. So, like, he would have, you know, experienced stuff like that, you know, going, like, through his career or whatever, but not all the time, in fairness to him. Like, he'd probably hate me bringing this up, but I've heard it, and I've known other people who've told me about other things happening as well. Like, no, that's a different case than that.
It's different, yeah, because that's on the field and opposition, and it's not right.
But it's very quick. People reach very quickly to that thing when something happens, like, you know.
Yeah. But have I a point on the welcoming thing, or I don't know. Okay, we'll move on from that.
I think your club and your county are definitely welcoming of you, but I would just be sort of worried about that undercurrent of it sometimes.
Well, it's an undercurrent, but the majority, I think, are absolutely welcoming.
Yeah.
And it's just a pity to see those comments. I think, like, he's been doing a video with Tommy Bowe, and it's been heavily promoted on YouTube. I think it's with Air.
That was it, an Air thing.
Yeah, so it's probably because that's been, you know, given such exposure that's where the comments are coming from. But that's it. It's a minority, and it's a faceless minority. That from as I said, I would have heard maybe anecdotal evidence, not a whole lot of it in Mayo, of kind of racial abuse on the pitch and stuff like that. But I do think, thankfully, that they're isolated, and in the vast majority of cases, as he says himself, that everyone is welcoming. Yeah.
Okay, right. Carlow suspensions didn't get lifted. So on Monday night, Turlock, O'Brien, Brendan Murphy and their coach Stephen Poacher had their suspensions upheld by the CAC, Central Appeals Committee. So the CCCC, have everybody be aware of this process by now, gave them the suspensions. Then they appealed it to the Central Hearings Committee, which is the CHC. They upheld them and increased Turlock's one from 16 to 20. And now they've gone to the CAC, Central Appeals Committee. So their next step is the DRA, but apparently they don't have enough time between Monday and Saturday to go to the DRA to get themselves available for the Meath game on Saturday. So that's it, decided. I don't think too many people would have much sympathy for them based on the evidence of the video. They're going to have to suck it up now. They didn't have Brendan Murphy last year in the championship, and they performed very well. So I don't think there should be too much, stock put into that. They beat Kildare obviously last year and Louth without him, and I think that they might benefit from not having that poacher running in and out in the field. Painting the image of Carlow in not the best light, and potentially turning referees against them during the game. And Turlock's no stranger for shouting in at referees as well. So I think they might miss Turlock in the dressing room. They might miss the team talks and stuff. But in general, I don't know. I think I'd say they're training away anyways with Carlow. There's no managers ever comply with that punishment anyways. They always stay training, and they might train somewhere that is unannounced and they'll be there. And sure, that my information is that they probably are still training the team. So they're still training, but just not there on match day in the dressing room. Do you think that has a huge
Turlock
effect?
O'Brien tries to do a Mourinho and get in with the laundry basket.
In the basket.
I don't think so.
Well, knowing Poacher's opinion of himself, he'll feel that he really needs to be there, and potentially he could do something like that. But
I was actually wondering, will they miss him on the sideline of Poacher, because I'd say he the way they play is probably designed a lot by him, and the way they train, so he's probably the one instructing them the whole time.
Yeah.
So maybe they need that voice on the sideline. The DRAs, like that was the one that Diarmuid Connolly got off the night before the Mayo replay. 2016 was it? So there's still time, if
maybe Dublin put those wheels in motion before the Monday night before. Usually you have a 3-week lead in, so you'd have more time to get that
surely
going.
It's going to be a technicality they're hoping to get
that's
off.
That's all you get off.
There's no defence.
That's what the DRA is for. Which I actually don't think the DRA should be there at all. I think it's wrong.
Well, I thought at the time Connolly had no defence, because he was caught punching Lee Keegan, but then the DRA came in, and I think it was put down a self-defence or something.
No, it was a technicality of some description anyway. Sure, Mayo used it before as well.
They've all used it. They've all used it, which is completely wrong. So anyways, that's Carlow against Meath. We'll talk about some of these games in part 3. Finish up here. Aaron Moore GAA have contacted me, and they wanted me to give them a shout out. So they're an island team from Donegal, and they take part in the Inter-Island GAA tournament once a year, and they were Inter-Island winners in 2014. So he says, lads, any chance of a shout out on the next show for the Inter-Island tournament taking place on the 25th of May? 9 islands off the coast take part, from Donegal to Cork, for the chance of All-Ireland glory. Get in there now, lads. Now get set fire to. They used to be hardy hooers now from the islands, to be well used to fishing and all those other stereotypical things. Farming
and RT aren't bloody showing it either.
And if it doesn't get a mention on the Sunday game, well, I'm done. You'd think Sky would pick one of them. Right, okay. We'll be back when we look at Mayo Roscommon. So James Horan, the Messiah, is back, Conor. He's never lost a Connacht provincial match. He's played 11 and he's won 11. Hammering all of them in the meantime. Hammered Roscommon. Now Roscommon got close to him in another game I was at. Hammered Galway. Just were well able to beat everybody under James Horan. So I don't know, has he got that kind of Midas touch? It's 18 years since Roscommon have beaten Mayo in the championship. Under James Horan, between 2011 and 2014, Mayo played 22 championship games. They won 17, drew 1, and only lost 4. The 4 they lost were 2 All-Ireland semi-finals and 2 All-Ireland finals. The only year they were not knocked out by the eventual champions was in 2011.
By Kerry
in the semi-final, and they were very close to being potential champions.
Probably should have been.
could easily have been. So they're beaten by the All-Ireland champions every year. So I don't know, there's just some sort of a confidence around Mayo when James Horan is involved.
Yeah, and it seems to have returned, even by the little evidence we've had this year just through the league, and just all reports I think coming from the camp, just real kind of positive messages, which I think that James Horan has always tried to encourage amongst his team. But it's a good job that he does have such a strong provincial record, because I was looking back to it there, and Mayo haven't won a provincial championship game of note, I would say, in McHugh Park since 2014, which would have been Horan's last year. So they've beaten Sligo, I think, in 2017. and they won a couple of qualifiers at McHale Park. But the last big championship game I would say the Mayo won at McHale Park was the Connacht final in 2014. And that was against Galway, and that was against a completely different Galway team to what they might come up against if they beat Roscommon.
That was Mulholland was the manager. There was a bit of it wasn't a serious.
Mayo won it comfortably. Galway didn't start really getting serious for even when Galway beat Mayo in 2016 at McHale Park was seen as a bit of a shock. So but like James Horan has said it now, he has to, like any manager worth their salt has to say that their focus is only on the next game or only on the provincial title. But I would say that James Horan is dead serious about that this year. First of all, because it's the easiest route into the Super 8s, but because Mayo need to get back that supremacy in Connacht. It was something we took for granted. You mentioned the record there. Something we took for granted under James Horan to the extent that we sleptwalked into that game against Galway in 2016. So yeah, I would say that obviously Mayo won the league, but I'd say that the message as soon as he's come back in has been about winning a Connacht title again this year. Yeah,
so you have a potential team through the grapevine in Mayo, and it's Henley, Barrett, Harrison, Higgins, Keegan, Plunkett, Durkin. Very strong defence. Then you've Rowan and O'Shea in midfield. Diarmuid O'Connor, Jason Doherty, Fergal Boland, Kevin McLaughlin is Darren Cohen and Evan Regan.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just not sold on Mayo yet. And we know that they're physically strong. They've got great running game, and that's a feature of James Horan's Mayo teams. And they blew a very inexperienced Kerry team away in the league final. All that's fine. They've no Vaughan. They've no Cillian O'Connor. They've no Andy Moran. They've no Tom Parsons. They've no Seamus O'Shea. They've no Colin Boyle. That's a lot of players from an All-Ireland potentially competing team with Dublin. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not sold on Mayo as being a very good team. I am. But I'm not sold on them being All-Ireland contenders or a team that could potentially beat Dublin with the team that...
Would you be sold on them if a lot of those lads were back in? Because all of them, bar Tom Parsons, who's kind of still working his way, are available to some extent. I expect a lot of them to come back in through the course of the season.
I'm surprised Cillian O'Connor's not picked full forward on that team now. I'm really surprised.
I suppose it's purely because he's only going on limited club football. He only would have played a couple of games club football before, and then he was in New York, so he would have done the training camp in New York as well. So I just think it's purely a reward for league form for a lot of them anyway. The likes of Darren Cohen came back, showed well towards the end of the league. Evan Regan didn't really show well in the league, to be honest, but he was how much can you read into man the match against New York? But I think the fact that he was starting against New York was probably because he was doing well in training.
Yeah, Evan Regan now has been tried and tested last years. If you're going to be depending on Evan Regan, you're not going to be winning in All Ireland, and I don't want to be disrespectful, and I'd put Darren Cohen in the same boat. I put Fergal Boland, who's out of his depth at the very top level, but is a good industrious wing forward at Sligo, potentially even Roscommon level of any team outside the very top teams. We've seen him. He's been tried. Stephen Rochford tried him. And then when it gets to the business end, he's gone because he's not good enough at that very, very top level.
I thought, to be fair to Fergal Boland, he has had his chances. I remember him starting against Galway in 2016 or 2017, the wet day in Saltdale, 2017, after a really good league. And as I said, he flattered to deceive. And there was a couple of, I think later on in that championship, he was given a chance as well. To be fair to him, all I can say in his defence is that he had a very good league. He spurned a couple of goal chances against Kerry, but he was averaging about 4 points from play from wing forward towards the end. And again, I don't know, if Mayo are going to advance and get to the Super 8s, is this going to be the team that you're going to see in the first round of Super 8s? Probably not.
No. And I think league form is very misleading. You have to give lads a chance because you have to reward them. But at the same time, we saw Cork and Limerick in the hurling. We see it all the time. Championship is just a completely different...
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing. If you've got yourself in physical shape and want to hit the league hard and have targeted personally, good chance you'll have a good league because fellas you're marking won't be at that level, and especially with a new manager, because I remember in Rochford's first year he played every league game as well and he was chipping in for those 2 points until the business end came and he wasn't good enough then. It's for that reason that forward line for me is not top bracket forward line.
But is that not why James Horan's maybe doing the right thing? Because if you look at the defence again, it's one of the best defences in Ireland yet again. The full back line has everything. The two midfielders are absolutely flying, so they'll probably dominate most teams. So then maybe Horan has to just try something. How many times, like the last few years, we've been talking about the Mayo forward line, and
that's the thing.
And maybe playing bowling just allows Kevin McLaughlin that bit more freedom and make him a bit more dangerous rather than having to track back or playing in the sweeper role like we've seen him before.
But I think McLaughlin and Evan Regan, two strong lefties. I can't see them both playing in the corner. I see Regan and Cohen maybe left inside, and McLaughlin might have to drift out, or one of them might drift. Can Darren Cohen drift out? I can't imagine two lefties being left in the wrong corners.
Darren Cohen wouldn't drift out too far. No, he'd be wanting to play closer to goal. Now he has a booming kick from, like, he's well able to kick points from, you know, outside the 45, but he wouldn't be as mobile compared to the rest of that forward line. So I'd imagine he'd stay in.
Regan's not going to be playing in the number 15 corner anyway. We know that.
Yeah, well, he played a wing forward. I actually thought that Kevin McLaughlin would play wing forward against New York, but Evan Regan actually played further out the pitch. But whether it's two of them stay inside, and the one thing I like about, like, I nearly don't. I do like Kevin McLaughlin inside because I think he's a brilliant ball winner. But I don't like him. I don't like him inside because he is so industrious out the field. He's a brilliant break. He's brilliant on the break, and he's well, I don't know, is he underrated as a kick passer? But I just think he's a brilliant kick passer as well.
Brilliant kick passer. Yeah.
So that's why I kind of don't like him, and I think that forward line is going to evolve as the year that goes on. I'm not sure will Kevin McLaughlin stay inside. So I don't know. Like like Conor mentioned there, but like Mayo wanted to do something different. An accusation that's been made against Mayo in the last few years that we've nothing to bring on. And now I suppose if you're looking at the bench the next day, you've Andy and Killian for a start, and then you've some of the lads that have probably been forgotten about to a certain degree that did well during the league. James Carr started against New York, was brilliant against Kerry in the league final.
I thought he would have been ahead of Cohen.
I would have thought so, yeah. Fionn McDonough, who kind of faded after a really strong start to the league, and then you've Kieran Tracy who finished the league strong as well. So I don't know, like there's that's one thing I would have said about Mayo before, is like you look through the programme, you're looking at the bench and you're saying who's going to come on and make an impact here. Whereas I think if you look at the programme on Saturday evening, you're confident in that there's a few lads that come in that will make an impact.
Yeah, for me, Cillian O'Connor comes back in at 14, and either Seamus O'Shea or Tom Parsons, if he gets back, or Vaughan goes potentially to midfield, and Aidan O'Shea goes into the forwards. I think they have to bring the forward line's just not beefy enough for me. Like, I mean, I know Aidan O'Shea is doing well in midfield, but we all know midfield is his best position. But it's like needs must. Why has he been playing in the forwards? Because they need them. They need forwards. And then Jason Doherty could potentially go into a full forward line, and it's a much more dangerous forward line. And then you've got the whole Mayo running game and everything. But like, I don't see, like we'll see on Saturday night. I think Roscommon are a good bet, +5, because people are talking this is a defining game for Roscommon, because they've played in 4 Connacht finals since 2016. Now one of them was a replay, and during that time they've played 3 seasons in Division 1 and won a Division 2 league title. So as far as Roscommon are concerned now, this is either shit or get off the pot. Let's be honest about it. What are you fellas all about? What are you here for? Like, I mean, it's not a young team anymore. There's none of this, they're up and coming. You're either going to do something now or you're not going to do something. Now maybe that might be a little bit harsh on a team that won a Connacht title, but they haven't impressed outside of that then. And last year they're coming off a terrible loss against Tyrone. Enda Smith is going to be back. He didn't play against Leitrim. And all the talk is potentially Roscommon have got the physicality this year, and they've maybe done a bit of strength and conditioning, and maybe they've got a game plan that can frustrate Mayo and pretty much take Galway's example, bring it into a war that Mayo don't really like and don't give them any space. And that's the blueprint, really. Well, it has been in Connacht for the last 3 years. Yeah, because
we have always talked about their conditioning and how they're a young team and exciting and nice to watch.
Their conditioning has not been good enough,
yeah, but then I was looking at the full forward line against Leitrim, and it's Diarmuid Murtagh and Conor Cox. You're just 2 bulls, like, and then your man Alton Harney was beside them.
He's a big one now. Yeah. Enda Smith, Malooly, Cottle Craig. The 3 Dailies are in the back line, and they're hardy bits of stuff. Like, this is I think Cunningham has identified this. I'd say he's done a lot of work, strength and conditioning, and he's trying to pick bigger fellas.
Yeah, and the man Doherty was wing forward for them against Leitrim, like, and he just looks like a big unit as well. Like, you know, he looks young enough, but I think Smith might come in for him anyway. But like, you know, they are using these men and they're sort of targeting it. They're not going to be sort of bullied anymore. So like, maybe this is just a progression though of a young, exciting team that we've seen coming through, and maybe they're getting to that stage where they are ready and they're becoming men, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Like, I mean, James Horan has even commented on it. He says under Anthony Cunningham, I think they're very focused, very keen to do well, playing hard and being really physical. and maybe James Horan, pretty much all he would have seen from Roscommon is that very first league game that we saw that was in the wet and the rain, and that was going to be a physical game no matter what in those conditions, I suppose.
They're even quite physical actually in the FPD league as well. I think Anthony Cunningham had said that and identified it, and you couldn't read much into that into the league game at the start of the year. Conditions were so bad, but I know to me the proof will be in the pudding for Roscommon, because I've heard this for years, is it like that condition is their problem, and like Kevin McShay was really frank about it. Was it either after the Tyrone game or after the Mayo game in 2017, where they got opened up in both games and got absolutely destroyed. It got ran all over the place. Now, it wasn't just like we might mistake conditioning as just being size, but like fitness even, like Mayo and Tyrone absolutely ran all over Roscommon in both those games. So like as I said, Anthony Cunningham has talked about it, but until I see that, like, and I still think that like the key to Mayo winning the game the next day will be that physicality and will be that running game, especially around that middle eight. Like, I know we mentioned Fergal Boland, and like compared to the rest of them, he's not as kind of physically imposing, let's say, but the rest of that kind of middle eight, half back line, half forward line, I think is really strong, really powerful for Mayo. And I think that'll be, if Mayo are to win the game, I think that'll be the platform where they go about winning it.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do about Keith Higgins just abandoning his post and just bombing up the field, because that's what he clearly does. Cox won't want to do it, Murta won't want to do it, Ulton Harney won't want to do it. So unless Roscommon use their brain and say, Kilroy, whenever Keith Higgins goes, I want you following him, and Cox, you come out and plunk it, and whoever centre forward then, who was centre forward the last day, Cathal Craig, you push across on Lee Keegan. So just juggle it around, that these fellas are not chasing him all over the field, and that would make sense to me.
Yeah, that's the way it should be done. Like, you just pass the man on rather than one person doing a 100-yard run, especially when he's your full forward, and then he has to get. We talk about Jamie Clark doing it, and you have to go back up and then be the main scoring threat again.
Yeah, because it's the last line of defence, and a lot of teams playing the sweeper, and this is something I didn't really agree with Paul Flynn on when he was explaining this. He was like that if you let your man off, he's going to mess up our sweeper, take him out of position. And I'm like, that's kind of what your sweeper's for. So, like, I mean, is your sweeper there to cover trouble? So he's there to pick up a man that's free. So let him pick him up. You have to trust your full back line at some stage. Is it better to trust your full back line with the sweeper having coming out on this runner and have Diarmuid Murta and have Conor Cox completely fresh for the next attack? Because this is the important thing. And Paul Flynn was talking about, there isn't really the turnovers where you're going to catch him out, you know what I mean, out of position. And I accept that point completely. Teams are too sophisticated now. You're not getting the turnover where suddenly you don't follow your man, the move breaks down and you're just here waving your hands, here, I'm free, and you score a goal, right? That's not going to happen. But what will happen is, for the next kick out, Keith Higgins will run back down onto to Conor Cox, and he'll be blowing. So the next time the ball comes in, Cox is going to make 2 or 3 runs, and Higgins Higgins versus Cox isn't a good example, because Higgins could probably run all day and come back and be, because Cox doesn't look like the fittest player. Do you take my point though? Like, it's about not gassing yourself out by tracking those runs. It's not necessarily by being free when the ball turns over.
I just think there's a couple of things on that specifically for the Mayo Roscommon game, because as you said, like, if Roscommon are using the Galway template, which I wouldn't blame them for using, given the success that Galway have had against Mayo in the last few years, even though this is a completely different team, completely different group of players. But if Roscommon are going to do that, they're going to have to drag bodies back at some stage. So that would likely free up at least one member of the Mayo backline, which it has been in recent years, and which would absolutely make sense, would be Keith Higgins. And the other thing on that is that Michael Plunkett is, if he starts at 6, he's very kind of he's different from a lot of the Mayo wing backs, particularly the recent vintage. So Paddy Durkin, Lee Keegan, Donald Vaughan, who want to bomb forward at every opportunity, whereas Michael Plunkett is more traditional. He's really good ball player, probably not as fast or dynamic as the others, but he's more likely to kind of anchor the 6th position, and if he did that potentially frees up Keith Higgins to do what he does well as well. So it just depends on how Roscommon set up. If they're going to go really defensive and then allow Mayo to have a free man, which I think they will to a certain extent. Whether they go to the same degree that Galway go, I don't know. Yeah,
I think they will go to that degree. And I think another thing Galway did really well with Mayo is they got inside their heads. They pissed them off. They trash talked them. And Mayo would have had this kind of arrogance 5 in a row. Who do you think you are? And Mayo, it was Mayo fellas getting sent off, not Galway fellas. or maybe it was a bit of both.
Mayo have had somebody sent off, I'm pretty sure, in the last 3 championship games against Galway. Definitely Jim O'Connor last year.
This is them losing a game, being trash talked and not liking it. Do you know what I mean? Because let's be honest, Mayo didn't respect Galway, and now they do. But at that point, Roscommon are at that point with Mayo. Now, let's be honest, Mayo don't really respect Galway.
Roscommon,
rather, sorry.
Let's get that quote right there. Yeah, and like there's 2 reasons for Roscommon to play that game plan as well. They had the worst defence in the league. You know, they leaked the most out of everybody, so they should be tightening up anyway, but also because
the worst defence in Division 1.
Yeah, in Division 1.
Sorry, but I think in the entire league outside of, who was I interviewing recently? It was, you keep talking and I'll think who had the
But no, in fairness, when you are getting relegated from Division 1, you're going to have a bad defence, obviously.
Sligo
there you go.
had the worst, yeah.
And then the other reason, of course, is because Galway showed that it can work against Mayo as well. So it does make sense. And I think what Roscommon seem to be bringing this year, though, as well, is a bit more of a bench than what they probably had. Like, I even just look at Fintan Craig, Conor Devaney, and Brian Stacko came on the last day. You know, that's energy coming on for them. And
that's without Shane Smith's, Enda Smith starting.
So, like, they're going to have a bit more options, maybe looking to go the length of 70 minutes as well with them. So it will be interesting. I think your +5 thing might be bang on.
Here's the thing, though. This is the Roscommon defence, right? So Enda Smith said before the Leitrim game, he said shipping scores too easy was a major problem last year. It did happen quite a bit, so one of our aims this year was to shore up defensively. I think we've done that to a degree this year. We were quite solid in a lot of games. Defensively and tactically, I definitely feel a lot more comfortable going into a game prepared as well. Now, this is a weird one. I would go on this, like we saw the game on air, they conceded 1-8 against Mayo. Defensive Roscommon. And it's mad how first impressions kind of dictate what you think. And I'd say James Horan, like I said, he wouldn't have seen much of Roscommon outside of videotapes recently when he knew he was playing them. Then they went out against Monaghan and they conceded 13. Again, great. If you're keeping a team under 13, 14 points, you have a great chance of winning the game. And most managers will tell you that. Monaghan won 10. Or no, sorry, Monaghan was 13. Tyrone won 10. Again, fantastic. That's under the threshold that managers will always tell you. Let's keep them under 13, 14. Whether that's 110, 111, all of that. Then it started to go wrong. 3-13 against Cavan, which really knocked the wind out of their sails now because, I mean, they always beat Cavan. 2-14 against Dublin, 1-16 against Galway, 2-17 against Kerry. To have the worst defensive record. So, without having seen these games, it's hard to know what's gone wrong with them. Like, is there confidence that brittle that a bad performance against Cavan 3-13 has knocked them away? Did they go away from it? You know, it's hard to answer these questions without having seen those games, you know, but definitely they can't be at the Galway level of defensive system towards the end of the league when they're running up those sort of scores.
I said I think it was last week I said that I think you might have disagreed with me, Conor. I don't think that if you've unless you've been practicing the system for that long that you can just, you know, decide to impose it in a game of this magnitude against Mayo. But the only games I saw for Roscommon, apart from maybe highlights, were the Dublin game. The Mayo, I don't think you can read much into the Mayo game. The first game conditions were terrible. And against Dublin, Roscommon were actually really good that day.
Yeah, they were. That was another game I saw, And
I thought they were quite open. They were more open than I expected them to be. And they really put it up to Dublin until like the closing stages. And maybe, I don't know, there might be kind of questions over the conditioning there again. But that's it. Like, 'cause I was looking at those results earlier on, it started off. It was really like the graph just dipped just after that Cavan game. So you'd like to think that they've stronger characters than that their confidence would just fall away. To be that brittle that it would just fall away after a loss like that. But again, like I don't know. Like with
they weren't. You're right though. They weren't majorly defensive against Dublin. I remember seeing that game. Like, I mean, and thinking, geez, they're nowhere near what I was expecting.
Yeah, completely. Because when Anthony Cunningham said it as much, and especially when he said that I expected them to be really defensive, like to go with the style of Galway. But I don't think they've gone that far at all. So unless he was prepping them so far out and working on the background of a system that he's going to unleash against Mayo, but I genuinely don't think so.
I think he will. I think Diarmuid Murtagh and Conor Cox will be left inside on their own. I think the other 12 outfield players will be working really hard. You know what I mean? I think Harney will probably go out around midfield and help out around in those physical encounters, and you'll be hoping Cathal Craig can get up and support the two lads whenever he can, because he's got that bit of class. I'd say that'll be their game plan. You'd be surprised If it's not, they're still under pressure in midfield. If Killoran scored 2 goals, he played a lot in the forwards, a makeshift midfielder, and Tiger O'Rourke, who's absolutely not a dominating midfielder, and they're coming up against probably Mayo's strongest line, arguably, with Aidan O'Shea in the form of his life, and McHugh Ruan, who is a great bit of stuff as well. I'd say Killoran or Tiger O'Rourke might stay with Ruan on the ground, but Aidan O'Shea will be bullying them, and without getting clean possession. What's going to be funny here is the Mayo kickouts, because Roscommon will be doing their level best to keep it away from midfield. So what would you do if you're a Mayor manager? If Roscommon absolutely are trying to keep it away from midfield, would it not make sense for you to go to midfield where they don't want you to go? But then you'll probably
I think Mayo will go to midfield,
and
put on a huge high press.
I don't think they will. I think Heneghan will be hitting these fancy kickouts, and he'll be going showing off his array of kicks, and he won't just go do what Roscommon don't want him to do.
Mumbo jumbo
Heneghan. This whole scientific stuff.
The thing in. Actually, I've been almost weary though. I think 2 years ago we were talking about Galway v Roscommon and how Roscommon won't want Galway to go to midfield, and Roscommon just went midfield every single time. Andy Smith had
he was brilliant,
game, but like it was almost like they were insulted that people thought that they couldn't compete in the air, and they dominated Galway that day. But yeah, I do think Aidan O'Shea is a different proposition. I think he's one of the best midfielders in terms of getting primary possession.
You'd imagine Enda Smith will be in midfield. They have to play him there. I know they don't want to. I'd like to say in an ideal world he'd play 12 or 11.
Does Lee Keegan go on Enda Smith again?
Well, I think if he plays midfield,
he did in the league.
If Enda Smith plays midfield, no. If Enda Smith goes into the forwards, Lee Keegan just goes in.
I agree, because Lee Keegan going into midfield was Rochford's was a real risk taker, wasn't he? He did things you weren't expecting at all. I don't think Horan would put Lee Keegan in midfield, and anyway, he probably shouldn't with the form of Ruan and Aidan O'Shea. Anyways, it probably doesn't make sense. So we get predictions here on this one, lads. Like I've said, Mayo 2-9, unbackable really for a win. Roscommon 9-2. Handicap here is 5, and that has really got my attention. I think Roscommon have to put in a good performance here. I don't think Mayo are anything special at home. I don't think that's anywhere near Mayo's strongest forward line, and for those reasons I think Roscommon, like we said, have been in the last 4 Connacht finals, have been in Division 1 for 3 years, have won Division 2. Jesus, if they can't get up and put in a performance and stay within 5 of Mayo, of a not full strength Mayo, in my opinion, well then I'm not speaking about Roscommon ever again on this show.
Forget about them as far as they're men. Yeah, I think
I'm going Roscommon +5.
I'm going to go with the same.
I am very persuasive. Don't let my persuasion fool you.
When I disagreed with you, Conor, about the defensive systems and how easy I think they are to implement, I meant in terms of Sligo and just keeping the score down against Galway, not in terms of actually competing against them and trying to beat them. And that's the important thing for Roscommon, is having 2 game plans, and I think you're starting to see that now. Like, you're starting to see a defensive game plan and then a new game when they're trying to attack and trying to beat teams. Like,
because that's the difference. Obviously Roscommon are not going to pack the defence looking to keep the score down. They want to win the game. That's the difference. Sligo, let's be honest, we're just trying to keep the score down. So Roscommon can't just pack it for no reason.
Yeah, and there's too many good players up top as well to do that. Like, so I think they'll really give them their fill of it. I think it'll be nasty. I think Anthony Cunningham will be well up for it as well. Bit of needle in this one, but I think Mayo will win, but Roscommon will stay within the 5.
I had been quite confident going in, but that 5 +5 handicap is actually quite tasty. I do think Mayo will win. It's going to a championship game with Mayo and McHugh Park. I haven't been confident in a while just with Mayo's record there. But I do think in good conditions on Saturday evening, I think Mayo will win 3 or 4. I think Roscommon might actually just get inside the handicap.
Okay, geez, we're all in agreement, lads. Fancy that. Right, okay, we'll come back with Paddy Power predictions, even though we just did a prediction. But you know. So Paddy Power predictions, lads. We'll start with Carlow and Meath. Just Carlow are a big price in this. It just shows they got relegated to Division 4, even though they targeted the league massively, and they've admittedly saying that. I was reading comments from one of their selectors, his name escapes me, and they said that the league was their most important competition of the whole year, and they got relegated out of it. So, you'd imagine this is a demoralised squad. You'd imagine it's a squad whose confidence isn't all that high. I think these suspensions psychologically might have added to the sense of doom and gloom So it's going to be difficult for them to lift it and play Meath. Meath are 1-8. The handicap here is 6. Obviously Meath were poor against Offaly, but I have a funny feeling they were taken by surprise by a very offensive Offaly team on the day. A team who were kicking the ball into their full forward line, had a lot of danger. I think Meath are well equipped. They showed against Tyrone last year and Navan that they're well equipped and well prepared to play the type of tactics that Carlow are going to bring to the table on Sunday. So for those reasons, I can't see anything other than a Meath win here. Now I know I said that last year with Kildare and Carlow and ended up looking stupid, but the element of surprise is gone with Carlow now. So Meath know exactly what's coming down the road. I don't think Kildare respected Carlow this time last year, or what the level of intensity and defensive system they were going to bring. And like I said, last year Meath are no strangers to being able to deal with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the Carlow this year are a completely different entity to what they were last year. I think even the suspensions, I remember there was a couple of comments coming out afterwards that they felt that there was the refereeing agenda against them during the league. They've kind of that thing that everything is going against them. They just don't have the momentum last year. The momentum they had last year, league didn't go well for them. I just think, as you said, the element of surprise is gone as well, and Meath are well used to playing against this style of football now. While by all accounts they weren't too impressive against Offaly, I just think I actually fancy Meath to win, and I think the handicap is 6.
Handicap is 6.
I think actually I fancy them to beat the handicap as well.
To beat Carlow by even more than that. I'm a bit put off by the 6. I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. They have it at a nice number that just the way Carlow play, it might not be easy to beat it. What do you think, Conan?
I think, as Conor says, when they think everything's going against them, I've been in that situation, then you're sort of expecting things to go against you.
Well, there's a siege mentality, and they can this is all okay. This is hindsight. This is hindsight analysis. So on Monday you'll go, well, Jesus, they were well up for this, or else you'll go, oh well, it was doom and gloom, and this was always going to happen. So
and that is the opportunity, but it's almost like because they've gotten relegated because of things going against them, and now because like their best players suspended and their management team, or I don't know if they're distracted, but like all these appeals are going on as well in the background. It's like they're just like. They seem like a different animal than they did in the last 2 years, where they were just waiting in the long grass, probably biting their teeth, going to rattle teams and really surprise the whole of Ireland. That's probably the narrative they had going into the championship. But now, as you say, the surprise is gone, and
the momentum, which is a big one as well, is gone.
And as Conor says, it does probably have that negative vibe around the place now, where they're just expecting things. If a goal goes in from Eve, the Carlow boys will be rolling their eyes going, here we go again.
Yeah, I think they could, and the feel-good factor and the Carlow rising and all that's all gone now. Now their management has been pretty much embarrassed with that video being released. They've been relegated back down. The rising is gone. Unless they use all this in their favour, which they potentially could. But anyways, well, I strongly fancy Meath, but I'm afraid of the 6. Conor, you're going with the 6.
Yeah.
Right. Dublin Louth. This is the other one in the Moore Park. This is at 7 o'clock. Dublin are 1-100. Louth are 25-1. Handicap here is 17. I'm fancying Louth to potentially beat the 17. I think Dublin in the first round are a little bit like meh. I think that they're just going to start filtering some players back into the team, and they're just going to warm up gradually towards the big ones in the Super 8s and in the All Ireland. They have to time their run. I think Darragh O'Shea was talking in the Irish Times yesterday about timing your run. I don't think Dublin will be blowing. I think Louth are a solid team in this year, and they were very good in Division 3. So I think they might stay within the 17, especially with it not in Croke Park. I think Dublin will beat the 17. Big one for Dublin really is how Philly McMahon come back in. Does Rory O'Carroll come back in? Does Cormac Costello start in the forward line when they have everyone fit? Does Darren Gavin start in midfield? You know what I mean? There's a few questions. Is Philly McMahon out of the picture, or is he being saved for the championship? We don't know that, because if we'll know, Jim Gavin doesn't mess around with his team. We'll know when that team is announced whether Philly's back in the mix or he's out.
Yeah.
Rory O'Carroll, I think, probably doesn't need to start and could still get back in because he's late coming. It's not as big a deal with him. Darren Gavin in midfield played a lot of the league. Obviously, that depends on James McCarthy playing in midfield or in the defence, which has a knock-on effect on Philly McMahon and Rory O'Carroll. And I think Owen Merchant is back from injury as well. So, these are the questions. Cormac Costello, does he get into the forward line with everybody fit? So you're talking about last year's forward line: Brian Howard, Kieran Kilkenny, Niall Scully. He doesn't get in ahead of Brian Howard or Niall Scully as a working wing forward. That's a fact. He doesn't get in ahead of Kieran Kilkenny. Let's all have a good laugh at even the thoughts of him getting in ahead of Kilkenny. And then he's trying to get in ahead of Paul Mannion, Dean Rock and Conor Callaghan. Like, and you'd almost have to say Cormac Costello deserves his starting spot, but where is that?
On paper, would any of those 6? No, he doesn't get in. But for me, he gets in because he was their best forward during the league, and I think Jim Gavin, one thing that he does do is reward for him.
Yeah.
I think Costello couldn't have done more. I remember he absolutely tore Keith Higgins a new one in Grove Park that night, and he did that to a few defenders throughout the league. I think it's probably about time that Cormac Costello is thinking as well that, listen, I'm not going to be the new Kevin McManaman. I'm not going to be the new super sub. I want to get my chance to establish myself in the 15. Hard enough as it is to do, but I think that he'll be given a chance definitely at the start of the championship. Maybe given this start, when Dublin win, no offence to Louth, given another start, and if that isn't enough to get him into the 15 kind of permanently going forward, well then it'll be back to the usual. But I think that's what he'll do. I think he'll reward Costello. I think he'll reward Darren Gavin for his performances during the league as well. I think he'll start. As for it wouldn't surprise me if Rory Carroll came back in, but what you say there about could he be kind of eased back in, I think that's harder for somebody in a full back line as opposed to maybe somebody that might play further up the pitch. I think full back lines often tend to be established early. I'd like to kind of keep a consistency there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Philly McMahon is kind of mad as it is to say it, to be kind of eased out as the year goes on.
So if Darren Gavin plays in midfield, James McCarthy's wing back, Keane, O'Sullivan, Jack McCaffrey, then you'd have John Small cornerback. They have an extra man there, and then they're wondering who plays in the cornerback. They definitely have some questions that they need to answer in and around their back line and midfield.
Yeah, I think Rory Carroll will start actually. I think Jim Gavin generally picks the team who he has as his team.
I think so too.
Every week.
And the scary part of anyone not making this Louth game is they have Louth who they'll hammer. They have Kildare, Longford. Kildare nowhere near where they were a couple early, even last year. They should win that, and they should win the next 3 games comfortably.
Super 8s then, yeah.
Then you're into the Super 8s, and you've already, if you're Cormac Costello, you've hit 1-4, 1-3, and 1-6 there in those 3 games. You're not out then until Super 8s, and whoever didn't make this Louth game is under serious pressure to get in.
And that's what happened. It's amazing how seamlessly, if Bernard Brogan and Paul Flynn and boys like that lost their places. That would have been unthinkable a few years back.
Yeah.
But they did, because he gave boys chances. He brought Brian Howard in, gave him his chance. But I remember I was sort of thinking, Brian Howard's not going to make that team. Why is he missing the Sigerson Cup game? But he got his jersey, he kept his jersey, and now there he is. And then suddenly he's just established, and then somebody good is on the bench, and whether that be Dean Rock or Paul Mannion or something, it could be.
I think Dean Rock could be the one that could lose out, because he was the one that lost out a few times during the league.
Yeah. I think O'Carroll, I think he's in for a reason, and I actually think they'll also want to avoid him being more of a storyline than he already is. If you get him in now against Laois,
get that storyline out of the way, is it?
True.
Yeah. And
it's very soon to come back in though, isn't it?
He's going well with Kilmacud. He's been back a few months.
Going all right with them.
Yeah, and it probably is a good time to come in the Leinster Championship and get 3 games under your belt. And I think they did bring him in for a purpose, and they're going to get him straight in. Well, that's what I think.
Okay. The handicap here is the only thing threatened, lads. Are they going? It was 17 under pressure here, or what do you think? We're all going for a Dublin.
I think Louth beat the handicap. Yeah, I think the exact same as you. I think it was in Croke Park. I think I'd fancy Dublin to win by 17 or more, but Louth are decent. I expect them to stay with them for a long time, and then Dublin to probably win by about 10 points.
Yeah. No, I'd be thinking 12 to 15 point win maybe.
On paper, I think Dublin would hammer it, but they haven't been the same this year so far, and I know it's only the league, but I think Louth will stay within it.
Okay, right. The other one is Antrim Tyrone. Similar odds here, lads. Antrim 1-80, Tyrone 20-1. Handicap here is 12. Let's just get straight into predictions here, lads, because this is going to be one-sided, and we spoke loads about Tyrone. So I'm going for Tyrone here, and I'm going for them to beat the 12.
Tyrone minus 12 for me.
Yeah, same as.
Okay, great stuff. Laois Westmeath, O'Connor Park, 2 o'clock. I'm going to go to this one. Then again, I didn't like what Conor said about the weather forecast is bad. Westmeath are even money. Laois are slight outsiders at 11 to 10. I'd have that pretty much the same. Westmeath have beaten Laois twice already this year. Laois are missing Trevor Collins and Robbie Piggott, who will be 2 men on the half back line. Benny Carroll has obviously gone to America. So, if you're judging off the Division 3 league final, you'd have Westmeath as favourites for this, because Laois were very, very disappointing in that game. So they have a lot of improving to do. I thought the ball into the full forward line was horrific into Doherty and Evan O'Carroll. I didn't think they had a very good system. We saw with Armagh and Down how easy it is to get in good ball and potentially work off it if you have ball winners in there, and Laois have plenty of ball winners in there now, even though Westmeath will play defensively. So it's an interesting one. Kevin Martin was doing some media this week. He's saying it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. They're going to have their homework done. When it comes to championship, it's a different game altogether. Teams will raise it 10 or 15%. But he says this is probably one of the strongest panels I've ever seen there. A lot of young lads have been in and out the last few years, are after stepping up big time. The likes of Ronan Wallace, full back, he was one of the best players in the league. So I don't know, there's just a real, if you're talking about momentum and everything, Westmeath have won everything that they could win so far this year. I have Westmeath as slight favourites. Unless there's a big improvement for Laois, you'd be feeling Westmeath, but I'm not going to go against my own county in a 50-50 game. So we'll have to give it to Laois to pull it out of the fire and have their forward line improve a lot.
I'm raging I didn't go with a draw last week at any stage for some of the games, and I think this one might be the one they put a draw on. They're 2 good teams. Like, they both have the same sort of balance within their teams, and they're both well matched, and they've already played each other twice. They're so I do think 2 good managers. I think this has all the potential to be a draw.
I'm actually going to go for Westmeath. There's a thing like if you could say that because they played in the league final, that there was a bit of shadow boxing between, like, maybe on Laois's behalf. But I don't think so. I don't think so. I think Laois were just flat on the day. As you said, the ball into the forward line was terrible, and like Westmeath didn't hammer them or anything, but they just looked a better team on the day. And sometimes teams have a number on other teams, when they just meet them often enough, and just it gives them that extra bit of confidence, knowing that they've beat them a couple of times already, and knowing that at least they think they have their number. Now, I don't think there'll be much in it, especially with Laois at home, but I'm giving it very narrowly to Westmeath. Okay,
we won't hold that against you, Conor. Longford and Kildare in O'Connor Park, that's the second one. I might give this one a miss and come home and watch the hurling, like I was saying. So Longford had a strange league, really, because at one point they were top in the league. They lost to Laois, Westmeath and Down. Now, they could easily have lost to Offaly, and they could easily have lost to, I think it was Carlow was another close one. So they actually could have had a terrible league. As it turns out, the Mullinahachta lads came back in. 8 of them were called in. 7 of them came in. Rian Brady is gone. He'd be a starting forward for Longford. Donald McElliott and Paddy Fox joined up with them straight away and came straight back into the team. I heard Robbie Smith has gone off the panel. I think Longford, this is a huge pity for Longford, because if Longford had their full team, I'd fancy them to potentially win this game, because I think Kildare are sitting ducks. I don't think Kildare are anywhere near where they were. I don't think this is through no fault of Kildare's. I think the fella's missing. I think they're just sleepwalking through this year, Kildare are. I think they're ready to be taken out by someone. They'll be definitely taken out by Dublin. If I don't think Longford will have enough to take them out. I initially had Longford -3 as a great bet, and then started reading about all the fellas that Longford are missing, and then was like, oh look, I'll stay away from that altogether. So I fancy Kildare just to scrape over the line here against Longford.
Yeah, I fancy Kildare as well.
Yeah, I make that 3. It's just I probably would have done the same as you before hearing the lads are gone to the States, because I don't know that has there been any team responsible for more shocks in the championship than Longford over the last few years. Monaghan, Meath last year, do you know what I mean?
Derry twice in a couple of years.
Derry, yeah, really good championship team, particularly actually in the qualifiers. I know this is the Leinster Championship, but just with everything, with the way the league went and with those lads gone, I'm going for Kildare as well. Will they beat the handicap?
Stay away from the handicap. Yeah, sometimes you can stay away from the it's allowed to just stay away from it. I'm not touching that. Ulster quarter-final then, last one, lads, before we have to leave it. Fermanagh and Donegal. Fermanagh 9-2 outsiders, Donegal 1-5 very strong favourites in Brewster Park. Handicap here is 5. Donegal don't like going to Brewster Park. I don't think anybody likes going to Brewster Park, but there is a little mini rivalry going on with these two teams down through the years, because remember we did the show in Letterkenny last year, and it was always Fermanagh were able to get the better of Donegal, and they've beat them plenty of times, especially in Brewster Park. And last year in the Ulster final, Donegal tore them apart. Now I don't think they'll be tearing them apart in their own home ground, not the way Fermanagh are playing. I would chance Fermanagh +5 here.
A good bet here would be like under under 17.5 scores or something like that, the over and under. I think Donegal will win, but I think it'll be like 11-4 or something, and we'll be on here Monday and you'll be complaining about defensive football and Ulster and the championship, and this will be the start of it, and I'm raging it's going to be on TV for everybody to see it.
It is. It's going to be a very, very... Donegal are going to find it really hard to break them down. It often happens in these games that the first half could be 4-3 and the second half might open up a little bit. It's hard to keep that intensity up from the defensive teams right throughout the game, because we know the old school coaching you get, let the ball do the work, save your energy. But when you're not letting the ball do the work and you're running up and down the field, it's just physically impossible to keep that going, throughout the game.
I don't think conditions are going to be great on Sunday either, which probably won't help. But I agree to a certain extent. I think that I think it'll probably be low scoring, but I think Donegal will kind of run out comfortable in the end. I'm thinking back to the Monaghan game last year, and while Fermanagh sprung a shock, it was only because they got the goal so late. I think if they got it a little bit earlier, I think Monaghan would have ended up winning in the end, and maybe quite comfortably. So I fancy Donegal by, what's handicap, -5? Maybe I'll avoid the handicap, but fancy Donegal to be comfortable enough.
Yeah, I would have said that anywhere other than Brewster Park.
Right.
I fancy Fermanagh at home potentially having that bit of pride and that bit of history maybe against Donegal. So anyways, we'll see how that goes. Right, that's all we've time for. We'll be back on Monday and we'll review all the action from the weekend. We'll talk to you then. Good luck.